Hello fellow band directors, this is my lesson plan Genie that I use for lesson planning. I created this to mainstream what I was planning from week to week, as well as making it more accessible for administrators to see the content and information that they wanted to see from week to week. As requirements started to compile on top of each other for what we had to do for lesson plans over time, I developed this to make it easy so I didn't have to work as hard to create the things and materials and content that administrators need to see. So the first thing is I have a whole section here dedicated to beginning band. You obviously can click in this field, put your name, and if it's a different band class, you can put that as well as the period. If you scroll all the way down past that group of cells of everything that I have for beginning bands, the next group that I have is for my intermediate group, and I've got one for an advanced group. So I have 3 different levels here because I teach basically 3 different levels of band. The tab here for the week, you can see that I have it for August 30th. All I need to do is maybe before I start putting information in, just duplicate that and I can create one for each week. If your administration requires you to have it by day, then you can put it by day. The point is they can see all the lesson plans. I just share the link with them. I can print these lesson plans and they will go to a obviously document format or a PDF. And they'll be on multiple pages, of course, but they will be available if they prefer to see it that way. First thing is I teach in Florida, so we have these next generation standards. If you teach in another state, you can replace the information with what is within your state. And if you don't want to use that, of course, you can just highlight those particular fields and you can just delete them. If I check box one of these, it actually puts in the actual standard that's there. So as I just add check boxes, it'll put that information there. If I want to leave it there from week to week, I just leave it there from week to week. I also have this for the NAFME standards, the national standards. They break theirs into categories for creating, performing, responding, and connecting. And once again, if you just click on the box, it will add that particular standard in there. If you prefer, again, not to use those, you can just highlight all of the rows and you can just delete them if you don't feel like using those. I have drop-down menus for my weekly learning goals. Our district requires us to have learning goals that are worded similar to the standards. So for me, these are worded to model the standards that I have up here for our state. You can, of course, change those. I can show you how to do that at the end of the video. But if I just hit the drop-down menu, I have all the different particular learning goals that we have. They are a little broad in general, but that's just the way that our, mimicking the way that our next-gen standards are worded in our particular state. I have 2 fields for those, so if you're going to use more than one weekly learning goal, you can leave it there. And then I have, that ties into that, what our learning objectives are. So these are the actual more specific things that relate to those goals. For this, for my beginners, I have things that are scaffolded based on very, very early activities, all the way up to things like learning scales, things out of the book, particular things with band music, learning specific warm-ups, those kinds of things. So these are a little bit more specific than the actual learning goals. Again, you can add, delete, or change those. I can show you how to do that at the end of the video. And same thing with the music activities. So these are the actual things that we do that use those objectives that lead to those goals. So whether I'm going one-on-one around the room, or I'm doing things in small sections, or a seating test, or a formal assessment, whatever those kind of activities might be that we use to achieve those objectives and goals. Again, you can edit those, but I have them on a drop-down menu, so they're conveniently able to just be selected. The materials that I'm using, so if I'm using a metronome and a tuner, and perhaps with the beginners I'm using straws and balloons to work on breathing, whatever it is that I'm using, I'm going to check off those particular materials. Our district has asked us to provide examples of complexity questions. So if we're going to be using low-level questions, I will select different things. These are examples of questions that I may ask that are low-level questions. It doesn't mean I might use that question exactly, but it's examples of those because that's what they want to see. I have a couple fields for those, so if you're going to ask more than one of those within a lesson, it's there. Same thing with medium-level questions. I might select 1 or 2 medium-level questions that I'll use within a lesson. Same thing with high-level ones. And then the essential questions are ones that are tied, actually taken from the NAFME particular standards that they have on their website. Our particular district asks us to incorporate reciprocal reading strategies into our lessons as well, at least once a month. So at least once a month, I will choose a specific activity to do and kind of what we will be doing during that. They want to see that in a lesson plan. These are the 4 types of reciprocal teaching that they want us to use. So I have that there as well. And then a big thing for our district too is that we list, if we have an ESC student, if I have Susie Sheepenfold, I just put her name there, and let's say Susie Sheepenfold, let's say that she has speech impairment, so she has to see speech therapy once a week, or perhaps on the spectrum of having autism. So I would list whatever the exceptionality is there. And then if there's specific class accommodations, these are taken from the various different accommodations that we have for different categories such as presentation, responding, scheduling, and settings for tests. A whole slew of different accommodations. Okay, and these are ones that you would be using within your particular lesson. You can select multiple class accommodations, and I have this set up for 4 ESC students. If you needed to add to that, you can simply drag all these rows, you can copy, and you can paste and add another set of 4 of those, and it'll copy everything else over if you needed to add more. I have the same thing for ELL students. It used to be called ESOL, where English is their secondary language. I can list all of my students in this box. They just want to see general ESC. They don't want it specified by student in my district, so I just list all of the students here, any of the particular strategies that I'm going to use. If I'm going to be using, let's say, vocabulary, and then I have all of these specific ELL numbered. These are categorized through specific ELL strategies, and so I can select up to 4 for each category if I want to. It shows that I'm providing those particular accommodations. I have just a blanket statement here for other details of our lesson. There was a point where our school was asking us to include language and math common core concepts within our elective classes, similar to the above at the very top of our lessons. If I click one of those, these are ones that I have chosen that can have things that have to do with my band classes. I have listed things here within 6 through 8 for middle school for the different Common Core benchmarks, and then the topics to go along with it that would have to do with those language things that are actually music specified. For example, if I'm going to be using this one, engage effectively in a range of collaborative discussion. That's something that I think we do a lot in band. Well, perhaps that might be something that I'm doing about performance practice and reflection, or perhaps it's I'm going over a lot of musical terms or concepts. Well, that has to do with that actual strategy and benchmark, but I get to select that. That's something that if you don't use it, you can select all those rows and delete it. Similarly, have the same thing for math, Common Core benchmarks. These are the 3 normal ones that would be used in a band class on a regular basis. And once again, the actual music things that would have to do to relate to that. And then there's a section here to do a reflection. So that is basically what is listed in all 3 of these, and you can copy and paste. You can delete. One other thing, if you select your date here at the very top on the very first one, whatever date that you put here, so let's say I put 9/14, it will automatically populate to the other 3 categories. You can see it's already put 9/14 down there. And on my 3rd class level, it's also put 9/14. So it just automatically puts the date. Once you put it once, it puts it in the other 2. Okay, so now I'm going to show you if you want to actually change the standards. Let's say you're in a different state than I am and you want to put your own standards here. You obviously can just select that and type in whatever code that your state might use, okay, or identifying marker. You would leave this checkbox here, but you'd see here that I have some hidden things, and the hidden thing is just where that particular standard lives, and when I checkbox it, it throws it in that box. So if you just click this, it will unhide that, and you'll see where I have these hidden particular standards. So if you change that to whatever standard you're using in your state, this is the box where you would change it. You just double click up here and you would change that to whatever it's going to be. And when you have all of those across, you can obviously just check in this box and you can change whatever the names of your standards are in your state. And then all I would need to do is come back over, highlight that particular box, okay, and then select hide row, and then it would hide it again. And then whatever other stuff you've put in when you check that box, it will put that information in that particular box there. You would do the same thing with your reciprocal reading. Okay, if you were going to add something else there instead of reciprocal reading strategies, you could do a similar thing. Now, if you want to change anything in the drop-down menu, so let's say you do not like these particular learning goals that I have listed here, very easily, and this would go for any of the drop-down menus that you have, just click in that particular field and you go up to data, and you're going to go to data validation. And when you click that, it's automatically going to have the list of items that I have there. And these are all listed here. They're separated by a comma. So what that means is you don't want to put multiple commas into one learning goal, because that will separate that as separate options. So you'll see here that my very first one is listed like this. Students will be able to correctly identify and define sign music vocabulary, notes, rests, values. And so if I'm going to separate identifying information in the same goal, I do it with slashes. But when I hit a comma here, I put one comma, no space, and then I put whatever my next thing is going to be on the drop-down menu. That's how that works with Google Sheets. And so if you're going to edit those, you want to just use a comma with no spaces to separate one selected thing. And you can see that when I select that, there's my first one. You won't see the commas on your selections, but that's what separates the next thing. So you can see where I've used, instead of commas within a particular goal or anything that I have in drop-down menus, I've just used a slash. Again, it's just putting information there for your administrator to see or for you to see. And so that's how you would go through and edit those. Of course, you can copy and paste some of these if you want them in other spots and you want to just change some of the information, you can do that. So that is everything about the Lesson Plan Genie.